Talking about Native American Heritage Month, which is recognized in November. That's our topic tonight on Open Line. We would love for you to call and be part of the conversation with us. 615-737+. The number is on the bottom of your screen. Albert Bender is here with me tonight. He is a Cherokee activist. Thank you for being here once again. We've already had a great conversation, and I just want to follow up with two questions that we were talking about earlier. You were talking about the things that were unearthed when the Nashville Sound Stadium was being built. What happened to those items?
Well, those items are currently on display at the Tennessee State Museum. And when they were first unearthed, they were on display at the old museum. And there was a bit of a hiatus, so to speak, as to the items being put in storage. And they weren't immediately displayed at the new museum due to spatial problems and a reconfiguration of how things were going to be arranged at the new museum. But I have been informed recently, I'd say just within the past month or so, that many of the items are back on display at the new Tennessee State Museum. And in fact, I had the opportunity to go over there about a couple of weeks ago, and I saw where that they were once again putting the clay salt pans on display again, to my pleasure.
And that's so very important, because as you were speaking about with Olivia that we showed, not putting these items out is an erasure of history. And there are so many children, especially that go through that museum to learn about Tennessee history, it could be missed.
Exactly. And it's so important to use those salt pans and the existence of the history of ancient Nashville as an educational tool for not just school children, but for all Tennesseans, all Nashvillians of all races, creeds, and colors. And it's so important for people to realize the very brilliance and the extent of the ancient Native American civilizations that existed here 1,000 years ago, because the ancient Nashville, the vast ancient city, was just one of a huge number of cities of what was called the Mississippian period of indigenous history. And there were huge and great cities that extended from the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast, and also from the Atlantic coast to the edge of the Great Plains of eastern Oklahoma. And so the entire country needs to be aware of the advancements that ancient Native American cities existed in, and to be aware of the fact that at a time when places like in Europe, like Paris, Rome, and London, did not have the same populations or were not as advanced as Native American cities were at that particular time in world history.
Let's get to the phones now. We have James on the line joining the conversation tonight. Hi, James.
Hello.
Hello, go ahead.
Yes, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
It's been a few years ago, I was at the Tennessee State Museum, and they had a nice display, and I was kind of shocked, and I might be getting my facts wrong, that's why I'm calling, is that during the Trail of Tears, they drove the indigenous people to this part of the country, and then European settlers, they took the land back. They took the land back, and then they sold it back to the indigenous people, and then they took it back again. Can you explain those chain of events that happened during the Trail of Tears?
That's a great question. James, I'm going to hang up so you can listen to your TV. It makes it easier, but thank you for calling in. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Please, tell us more.
Yeah, well, the Trail of Tears was the most tragic event and tragic process to take place for Southern Indian nations. Over 60,000 Native American people were driven west under the process known as the Indian Removal Act, which was engineered by that infamous American president, Andrew Jackson. And over the process of the Trail of Tears, 60,000 people being driven west under the most adverse conditions, thousands upon thousands of people died. In the Cherokee Nation, 16,542 people were put on the Trail of Tears, and over 4,000 died in the process of being driven west. And it's also now even estimated that 4,000 more possibly died from the effects of the Trail of Tears after reaching Oklahoma. So that would mean that the Cherokee Nation at that time had its population cut in half by the horrendous conditions that existed on the Trail of Tears and subsequent to being driven to Oklahoma.
As James alluded to, the Trail of Tears really set up this chain reaction that I think probably, I guess, still affects indigenous people today. I mean, just the communities, your rights, recognition, everything. Do you agree?
Yes, that's very true. And it deals also from the standpoint of intergenerational trauma. Because for those of us who are descendants of the people who traversed the Trail of Tears, we still feel the effects of it. We're still reeling from and surviving from the effects of the Trail of Tears and the intergenerational trauma that affects our history to this very day and puts us in a disadvantageous position in terms of our governmental apparatus, our populations, but we're still bouncing back, so to speak. All the tribes, Cherokees, Choctaws, Creeks, Chickasaws, and Seminoles were all victims of the Trail of Tears. And as I said, we are still bouncing back from that horrendous genocidal event. And it was genocidal because it was put in place with the thought that once we reached Oklahoma, we would never resurge. We would eventually just kind of, I guess, in the viewpoint, from the viewpoint of Andrew Jackson, we would have just faded away eventually.
Right. We have to take another quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about current issues you're still dealing with. So we'll do that and take more of your phone calls right after this. Stay with us.